All right, we're on week number 2 of our Esther series. There we go. Last week we kind of set up the scene, and we talked about how Esther is an unusual book in the Bible because God's never mentioned, neither is prayer. You have to read between the lines a little bit, and the reason for that, of course, was Mordecai, who probably wrote it, was trying to get in the Persian library, and so he had to leave all that good stuff out, so it would still make it in. So we're going to talk today about Esther, of course, but there's always a lesson in there that we can learn because it's paralleling our lives. And today we're going to talk about the weight of disobedience, which is a heavy subject. Pardon the pun. I ran across this quote. I like this. We make our decisions, and then our decisions make us. Yeah, the things we choose to do have consequences. And we're going to talk about that, but that's kind of a depressing subject. So first, let's have a wedding. We're going to continue the story of Esther. Remember last week we left off, the king deposed his queen, who got too uppity for him. And so they had his big beauty contest, Bachelor, the Persia edition, where they're going to have all the beautiful women in the kingdom vie for the position of his new queen. And so we met Esther, and she was beautiful, so she was taken off to participate in this contest, which she didn't want to do, but she did. And her attitude and her heart was just good. And that has a lot to do with why she was successful. So, Esther had not revealed her nationality or her family background. Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Don't tell them you're a Jew. Okay. And now every day he walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was doing and what was happening to her. I think this really kind of shows a bit about the heart of Mordecai. He did not send her off for this. She was taken. And he's worried about her. She's a very innocent, beautiful, but innocent, naive young woman, and he's worried about her. So he goes every day to try to catch a sight of her to see how she's doing, or talk to somebody. Do you know Esther? How is she? It just kind of shows you the anxiousness of him. He's adopted her as his daughter, but he still loves her the same as he would his blood daughter. So he's worried about her. He's there doing what he should actually do, because this is kind of what fathers do. We look after, even when they're out of the nest. So now, before a young woman's turn came to go to the king, they're going to tell us how this works, this contest now. She had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, because, you don't want somebody who's a little bit ugly going before the king. You got to scrub her up, make her shiny as a penny, right? And then 6 months with oil and myrrh, and 6 with perfumes and cosmetics. Folks, that's 2 years of prepping her in order to go before the king. I'm sure they taught her manners, how to which fork went where on the table and all the things, because if she's going to be queen, right, she's going to have to know all these things. So she went through this intense training class. There used to be a thing. I don't think it exists anymore. There used to be a thing called finishing school. Have you ever heard of it? Finishing school? Finishing school is where they sent young ladies to learn how to be proper young ladies so they were suitable wives for rich men. That's really what the finishing school was. And I actually knew somebody who had gone to finishing school, Mrs. Mansfield. If you cross the Mansfield Bridge in McKeesport, that was named after her husband. And they went to my father's church, and she loved my father's preaching. And so every so often, she would take us out, the whole family, out to lunch after church, which was a big treat for us because we hardly ever ate out in those days. We were too poor. And we were always told to watch what she did when she ate and do that. Because my parents didn't want us to embarrass her because she had been, but the funniest thing, though, is when we ate a bowl of soup. Because, you get to the point in a bowl of soup when you have to slurp out of the bowl, right? And no one's doing it. Like, all the kids are down to the last bit of the bowl, but we're waiting to see what Polly Mansfield does with her soup, and because we're not allowed to slurp. And then she picked it up. She tilted it, and with her one spoon, she kind of just, and, well, okay, so we're all doing that now, I guess, That's finishing school, but that's what's going on here. She's going through finishing school. And it says, okay, now after that, then she would go before the king for one night. She got one night with the king to make her pitch. I don't know if you've ever seen The Bachelor show or something, but that's your one night. You get your date night. This is it. One night and this is it. You get to make your pitch why you should be queen, right? And so whatever she wanted to take with her, she was allowed to. So I don't know, did they have a harp or something? Were they going to sing? I don't know, special dancing shoes? I don't know. But anything they wanted to take from the harem with them, they could. And after that, she'd be taken to another room in a different part of the harem. Her day's done. You had your shot, unless the king wanted to see her again. Then she could get summoned back. That'd be a big deal, right? That's a callback. And so they're auditioning for the role here. Now, Esther just doesn't know what to do, right? She's naive, so she simply listens to Haggai, who's in charge of everything. She says, what should I bring? And he says, I'll tell you what to take. And she takes just what he says. And so he goes before, and it says Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. You know, Haggai had already thought she was great, and everybody who would like usher before the queen, everything, man, that one's special. There's something about her. And notice, it's not her looks. She won their favor by her attitude, and her inner beauty was winning friends, which is rare, because usually people hate beautiful people, you know, but she was actually winning people over. She's one of those rare people that you just like them, even though they're beautiful. They still like them. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful. Okay, the king was attracted to Esther more than any of the other women, and she won his favor and his approval. So he had her back night after night after night. And finally, it finally comes to him, okay, we can stop the contest. So he set a royal crown on her head, and he made her queen instead of Vashti. So he finally says, we can stop the contest. This is the one I want. And Esther will become the queen. Now, that was pretty quick into the competition, because if you remember, Haggai put her in the front. So it wasn't many in before he said, never mind, stop. Esther's the one. I want Esther. And so, because I know there are some women who have come up to me and said, Esther is my favorite character in the Bible, I didn't want to make this moment pass without showing you all the wedding.
Your queen.
A lot of flowers in Persia. There's a lot of flowers. He says Persians, your queen. I thought he said peasants at first. He says Persians, your queen. So there's a moment. That's from the movie One Night with the King, about this story. Okay, so that's great. And now suddenly everything changes, because the next chapter in Esther, we get away from this beautiful moment, and we get this instead. So one of the times that Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, now that's when he's, watching for Esther. He was there doing his job, but God used that. Watch how God uses that. And I love this guy's name, Big Thana. I just think that sounds like a bouncer to me. Who's by the door? Big Thana. Yeah, so Big Thana and Teresh, two of the king's officers who guard the doorway. So it's a bouncer, right? Big Thana. No one getting by Big Thana. All right. But they became angry for some reason about the king, and they conspired to assassinate him. But Mordecai found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. And when the report was investigated and found to be true, the two officials were impaled on poles. That seems to be the way they do things in Persia, by the way. That's execution, impaled on poles. I'm not going to go through the detail of that. Not a good way to go. Okay, so this is interesting, because what God has done is he's used Mordecai's natural concern for his daughter to put him in a position to overhear something that's going to make him more favorable to the king. Do you see that? He's not trying to get more favorable attitude with Xerxes any more than Esther was. It's just God's hand is upon their lives, and it's working all this stuff together. So we have it, and when she tells the king and it saves his life, that certainly makes the king feel pretty good about Esther. I have Vashti, who won't even come to my party, and now I have Esther, and she saved my life already. That's a really good queen. On top of that, who told you? This man named Mordecai. I remember that guy's name. He saved my life. Unfortunately, the king has other people doing plotting, and he accidentally promotes a very bad guy. And he promotes him probably because he's wealthy. Remember, this is coming up to the time he's going to invade Greece, and so he's trying to curry favor with the wealthy. So here's a guy who's very wealthy, and he's going to promote him. So after these things, King Ahasuerus, now that's King Xerxes. I don't know why they write it differently sometimes. That's the same king. King Xerxes promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite. Say that fast, Agagite. and advanced him and set him above a seat above all the officials who were with him. So he promoted him. Again, this was probably a political appointment because the family was funding the war. And all the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and did, here's a good word for you, obeisance to Haman. This is just like word of the day, vocabulary class here. Obeisance to Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai did not bow down or give honor. Then the king's servants who were at the gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you disobey the king's command?" Day after day they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. And therefore they told Haman about it. See, Haman didn't notice. He's walking through and everybody's bowing down, except Mordecai's not bowing down. And they watch it. Why aren't you bowing down? And he tells them, it's because I'm a Jew. I can't bow down to a man like that. I can only bow down and give honor to God. So they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he told him he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Now, you would think at that point there'd be a confrontation. You would think that Haman would see Mordecai, hey, why aren't you, it's like right there, bow down, come on, or arrest that man, take him off to prison, or something like that. That's how normal mind would work. I want to show you how twisted Haman's mind is, because that's not how his mind works. Yet, having learned who Mordecai's people were, he decided not to kill him. Instead, he looked for a way to kill all of Mordecai's people, the Jews. That's a whole different level, isn't it? One guy's not bowing down. You think throw him in prison or something, fine him, whip him, something. No, I'm going to get back at you by wiping out your entire nation. See, that's a twisted mind. That's a mind that isn't almost human. A human mind wouldn't think that. Some humans might be petty and they'd want to get back at him, sure. But I'm going to kill your entire family and your family's family and all the Jews because of this. It's not a normal human response. I'm just telling you, and there's a reason why he responds that way. But before we go on, so in the first month, which is the month of Nisan, the 12th year, they cast Pur, which means the lot. So basically he's saying, look, I'm going to destroy the Jews, but I'm going to let God decide when it is. Their God, the Persian God. So they cast lots as when do you want us to kill the Jews? How weird. But they did it. And it fell on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. And Haman said to the king, there's a certain people scattered and separated from among all the peoples in the provinces of your kingdom, and their laws are different from those of every other person. And they don't keep the king's laws, so the king should not tolerate them. So this is typical, right? When they conquered people, they tried to let them stay as a people and just simply pay taxes and honor to the king, because it's a lot easier that way than having to keep right on them. So you try to make them good servants of the Persian Empire. But he says there's some people just not playing. They're not playing the game. They're not really following our laws, and so you shouldn't tolerate them. We need to wipe them out. If it pleases the king, he says, let a decree be issued for their destruction. And I personally will pay 10,000 talents to the hands of the people who have to kill them. Like I know this is going to be bloody business. I know they're going to be working overtime. I'm going to pay 10,000 talents, which is a lot of money, in order for them to carry out their task. Out of my own pocket, I'll do this. This won't cost the king anything. So that they can put that in the king's treasuries. So the king took his signet ring from his hand, gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. And he says, you know what? You take that money, use it however you see fit, and I'll give you the people you need. Just do whatever seems good to you. Because he's still trying to curry favor to show him that he's, okay, yeah, that sounds good. Go ahead and kill them all. Go ahead and do that. So why is this happening? Like I said, it's not a normal response from a human being to commit genocide, basically. Literally, this is genocide. I'm going to wipe them out. I'm going to wipe the Jews off the face of the earth because of one man's disobedience. Well, let's do a flashback. I'm going to show you this actually was set up 100 years before. When the Israelites were coming out of Egypt and they're coming to the Promised Land, there's this group of people who pestered them all the way. They're attacking their flanks. They're stealing their food. They're doing raids on them the whole time. And God didn't care for that very much. And Moses said, I'm going to say the word. I'm going to go get them. I'm going to kill the Amalekites. I'm going to wipe them out. And God said, no, don't. I'll take care of them later. So that was in Exodus. Now we see in Samuel. So in Samuel, we've now got the first king of Israel. They're in the promised land, and their own people. They have now a full army. And the first king gets elected, a guy named Saul. And God says, okay, you're my king. You're the first king of Israel. I have a job for you to do, a job that's been sitting around since the Israelites came out of Egypt. So Samuel says to Saul, the Lord has sent me to anoint you king over his people, over Israel. Now, therefore, heed the voice of the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he ambushed Israel on the way when he came up from Egypt. So now, go and attack Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have. Do not spare any of them. This is one of those times that God is saying something that disturbs us. He's saying, wipe them out entirely. Men, women, children, donkeys, lamb, cattle, obliterate them. Wipe them out off the face of the earth. And this is the kind of stuff that freaks us out when we look back on it now. Wow, that's harsh. But I want you to see there's actually a spiritual war going on here that we don't understand, that God sees that we don't see. And when God's saying we need to wipe them out entirely, he meant it for a reason. But Saul doesn't do it. Here's what happens instead. Saul gathers the people together and numbered them, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah. That's a lot. And Saul came to a city of Amalek and lay in wait in the valley. And Saul attacked the Amalekites from Havilah all the way to Shur, which is east of Egypt. Now watch this. He also took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive. Now he was told to kill him, but he takes him alive. Why? Because you ransom kings for money. That's what you do. So killing the king makes no money at all. Makes no sense. Also, as a king that sets bad precedents. They all want to know they're going to be ransomed out. That's how it goes. So he keeps Agag alive. He had utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword who were there. But he didn't go back and wipe out all the people. But Saul and the people spared Agag, and they spared the best of the sheep and the oxen, and the fatlings and the lambs. In fact, all that was good, they were unwilling to destroy them. But everything that was despised and worthless, that they destroyed. So Saul made a command decision here. God gave him the battle. He wins. Okay, that was great. God said wipe out everything. You know what, God? Let's tweak that a little bit. I'm going to wipe out the bad things. The things we can make money on, I'm going to keep. It doesn't make any sense to destroy all this good stuff. We're going to keep it, even though you told us not to. Now, Samuel's going to show up, but it's really kind of a funny scene because Samuel can get salty. He walks up, and when he arrives after the victory's done, he's there to bless them, and Saul goes and says, "Hey, Samuel, how are you doing?" And Samuel says, I'm sorry, I can barely hear you over the sound of all these sheep that are supposed to be dead. I can barely even hear you right now. It's just so loud because of all this disobedience bleeding in my ear. And he says, well, when my soldiers didn't want to kill them either, we decided we were going to keep all the good stuff, but we're going to give 10% of it to God, so it'll be all right. Don't worry about that. We're going to make everything holy because we're going to give 10% of it to God, and we're going to give this great offering. Don't you worry. I got this all worked out, Samuel. God's going to love it. He's going to love this. And delayed obedience is just another name for disobedience, right? So saying that I'm going to do something later is exactly the same as not doing it. Can we see that? Delayed obedience is just another name for disobedience. And by the way, partial disobedience, same thing. I'm partially disobedient, that is just disobedient. When God tells you to do something, you do all of it. You don't do part of it. You don't say, well, I'll do it later. God doesn't care about that. I've told you to do it now. Right? That's disobedience. So if you want to defer it, that doesn't matter. If I only do part of it, it doesn't matter. It's still considered disobedience. And so when Samuel hears this, he says to him, He says, has the Lord great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifice? You think he likes that more than you obeying him? He says, behold, to obey is better than sacrifice. To heed is better than the richest of offerings. Now watch this next line. For rebellion is like the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is like an iniquity and idolatry. That's harsh, because if I were to ask Christians, do you ever do any witchcraft? Most Christians would say, no, I would never do such a thing. Never? No. Well, according to God, if you have ever been rebellious against his word, it's the same to him as witchcraft. And if he tells you to do something and you're just refusing to do it, like he's spoken to you, he's told you to do this, but you're stubbornly refusing, he considers that the same as idolatry. So the Christians say, I'd never do witchcraft. I would never have an idol in my house. He's saying, yeah, you do, because you have refused me and rebelled against me, and you've been stubborn against the things I've told you to do. It's the same thing. Because you see, he's looking at the heart. And if you look at the heart, you'll see that when you're stubborn, when God says, you need to do this, you say, yeah, I'm not doing that, Lord. What you've done is you've told him he's not Lord. You've told him you're more important than he is. Your wants, your desires are more important than God's wants and God's desires, which means you worship you, not God. That's idolatry. And as far as rebellion, same as witchcraft. What is witchcraft? Witchcraft is when you try to do something outside of God to make something happen for yourself. That's witchcraft. Whether it's a potion or a spell, you're saying, I want this to happen in my life, and so I'm going to do this. I don't need God. I can do this without him. The rabbit's foot or the potion or whatever it is. I'm going to do this. That's what witchcraft is. And so he says, when you're being rebellious, that's what you're saying. You're saying, I don't need God's blessing on my life. I don't need God's wisdom in my life. I don't need God's direction in my life. I can do this without him. He said, that's what witchcraft is. And so he's telling Saul, this is not a little thing. And then he goes on and tells him this, because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he also has rejected you from being king. Now remember, the Old Testament is a metaphor to us about our spiritual life. And that makes us the Israelites, just so you know. Every time you look at the Israelites and say, how stupid could they be? Remember, that's us. And so right here, we're seeing a metaphor for us. Because what's happening is, he's saying, because you rejected the word of the word of the Lord came to him from Samuel, it came from God, you knew it was from God, and you said, not me, Lord, not doing it. Because of that, you have been rejected as king. Let me put that another way for you. Saul lost his place in the kingdom. He was the king. So if he was being rejected from being king, what does that make him? Out of the kingdom. You understand? And so when God is saying that about that, you know what he's saying to us? If we're rebellious and stubborn, when he tells us to do, and we're rejecting his word, do you know what we're going to lose? Our place in the kingdom. It's simple. We have to obey the Lord. The words no and Lord should never be in a sentence together. You should never say, not so, Lord. No, Lord. Lord means yes, Lord. So that's what's going on. Partial obedience is rebellion, and the same as a cult and idolatry. Now, this kind of carries through into the New Testament. Watch this one, and from Hebrews. See that you do not refuse him who speaks. Who's him who speaks? Well, that's God, right? See that you don't refuse him. For if they could not escape he who refused who spoke on earth, meaning if Saul couldn't refuse Samuel, how much more shall we not escape if we turn away from him who speaks from heaven? God has spoken to you, and you have refused him. You think you're getting away with that, he's saying? See that you don't ever disobey he who speaks. God's word needs to be obeyed. Straight from heaven, he says. You're not going to get out of that one. Ecclesiastes puts it this way. Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is man's all. This is what's all you need to do. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. See, Saul was saying, hey, I kept all this stuff so I could give an offering to God, but that's not why he kept it. It may look like a good work to some people. Oh, that's good. He's going to give an offering to the Lord. He'll like that. No, because his heart was evil. And God's saying, I see that. Sometimes people do good things for wrong reasons. You know that. You've seen it. You've seen it in your own life. It looks good. You may even have admired it from a distance, but behind it, their motivations were not good. It was conniving, it was manipulative, whatever. But every secret thing, whether it's good or evil, God's going to see it. That's what Ecclesiastes says. Now, because Agag's family was spared, because Saul refused to do what God told him to do, 100 years later, we see this. Xerxes promote Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. He's a descendant of Agag. When God said kill him, he meant kill him. And now, 100 years later, he's still alive, and that's why he wants to kill the Jews. Because he belongs to Satan. All the Amalekites did. They worshiped Satan. They don't call it Satan. It was some fake god. But they basically have given themselves over to Satan. And the spirit of Satan is upon him. That's why he goes to kill all the Jews. That's why it's not a human response. It's a spiritual response. There's a spiritual war that's been raging here for over 100 years. And because Saul didn't do his job, now Mordecai is going to have to deal with it. The Lord has reasons for what he commands you to do, is what I'm trying to tell you. Even if you don't understand it. Even if it seems, well, that's kind of crazy. But God's commanded you to do it. And if you don't do it, it's going to have ramifications. It's going to affect you. Now, you may not see it in this lifetime, but your children might. Or their children's children. There are spiritual ramifications to decisions we make and things we do. I've seen these things play out. Like I've seen it in different times that I've been counseling with people, and they're talking to me about things that have happened in the past, and I realize, oh my God, this is generational. Coming from generation to generation, being passed down. There's a spiritual war going on. And a lot of times you're fighting a battle in a physical world without realizing there's also a spiritual world, and you're trying to fight a two-front war on one front. That's why you're losing. We have to understand God has reasons for what he does. I love this in Numbers. If you do not obey, then take note. For you have sinned against the Lord. That's real simple. God told you to do something, you didn't do it. That's called sin. And be sure your sin will find you. You're not getting away from it. That sin's going to come back. It's not like, oh, well, got away that one. No, you didn't. It's coming. And so what we try to do is we try to compromise with the sin. We try to say, all right, well, I'll do this part, God, but not the other part, just like Saul was doing. We do it too. We do it all the time. God has clearly told us what to do, and we say, okay, I'll do some of it. Okay, I won't have that affair. I'll just watch porn instead. Okay, I won't get high all the time, only on weekends. Okay, I won't, fill in the blank. You've done it. You said, okay, I can't do what God's asking me to do, but I can do this part. I'll just do that. I'll compromise. I'll do this. And God will be happy about that. He'll be happy to see me making some progress. You know? Yeah. My life was a mess all last week. This time it was only, Monday through Friday. He'll like that. That's an improvement, right? I'm going to compromise. I'm going to do part of it. I'm going to do part of what God told me to do. And you just have to know that compromising with sin is like offering a hungry tiger half of your sandwich. Right? Okay, he'll be happy with this. He'll be happy to eat that half of the sandwich, by the way, and then he'll eat the other half, and you. And it's like how it goes. That's how sin works. Right? You can't compromise with it. I'm going to give you half. Sure, I'll take that now. I'll be back for the rest. I own you now. That's how sin is. That's why we can't get it out of our life, because we refuse to do what God told us to do. We do part of it, we do some of it, or we defer it for later. I'll get to that. That's Christianity 201. I'm still on Christianity 101. I'll get to that eventually. But God's telling you to do it now. And we just don't. See, Haman is a spiritual descendant of Agag. And we know that. We know this is coming straight from Satan because he wants to be worshipped. You see that? What's he get mad at him for? He won't bow down to him. You're supposed to worship me. because you don't worship me, I'm going to kill all the Jews. Where's that coming from? Well, that's coming from Satan. We know that's coming from Satan because it's literally in his very first thing. The very first sin that came along to the world was what? Satan comes to Eve and says, God knows. Then the day you eat that fruit, your eyes will be open and you will be like God. That's the sin. It's not the fruit. It's being like God. That's what Satan's always calling out. So you have to be careful with people who've bought into that. Be aware of those seeking to be exalted. And boy, is there a great example of that going on in the world right now, specifically this country. Someone who loves to be exalted. We have to be careful of that. We need to be very, very careful of that because this comes from Satan. We see this in Isaiah. It says, how far you have fallen from heaven, Lucifer, Satan, son of the morning. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. That's Satan. That's how we introduced to Satan in the Bible. That's who he was. He wants to be worshipped. And all of his followers, guess what they want? They want to be worshipped too. That's the spirit of the Antichrist. In that 2 Thessalonians, Paul puts it this way, don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion, notice the rebellion, starts the rebellious heart, occurs, and the Antichrist is revealed, the man doomed for destruction, because he will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped. So he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. This is the spirit of Satan, and it's on people. And you know some of them. There's some people who always have to be exalted. Now, sometimes people are a little insecure, and they're always trying to exalt themselves. Those people wear you out. But that's still coming from Satan. You understand? This is not the attitude of one who humbles himself before the Lord and just wants God to get the glory. When you're trying to grab all the glory, that's not coming from God. Jesus says, whoever exalts himself will be humbled. He who humbles himself will be exalted. This is the spirit of the Antichrist. You can see it. You can see the spirit of Satan still working in Agag. And you can see that he should have been destroyed 100 years before. But he wasn't. And so the sin carries over. Not to Saul, but to Saul's descendants. This is how it works. We think we're getting away with it. We think we can compromise. We think we can do part of the sin or defer it. We'll deal with it later. We think so. But the chains are made up of small sins. They're just too weak to be felt until it's too strong to be broken. Eventually, Satan has you. I know it's a depressing service. It started out so nice. It was a pretty wedding. But this is what happens when we're disobedient to what God tells us to do. What's he calling you to do? What is he calling you to do that you've thought, that can't be right? That can't be right. But you know it's being told, you're being told by God to do it. It doesn't make sense, but God's told you to do it. Are you going to listen to him or not? Because if you're not, you're deferring the sin for later. But don't worry. As the Bible assures us, you will find your sin. And as Paul puts it in Galatians, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, he will reap. If he sows to his flesh, he will from the flesh reap corruption. But he who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap everlasting life. He said, you think God's not paying attention? Do you think he's not seeing what's going on? God's not going to be mocked by you. You're going to reap what you sow. A lot of times I see people in their lives and they finally get desperate and they start telling me all the past and all the times God has reached out to them so many times. And I think, well, I'll pray for you. But you are reaping what you sowed. This is what happens when we don't get serious about the sin that God reveals in our life, when we don't do what he tells us to do.